You look in the mirror every morning. You see your features, your eyes, the curve of your lips. You know what you look like. You know what your parents look like. You know what presidents, actors, and criminals look like. Humanity has documented everything, but there are two faces that no one living has ever seen. Two faces that define the polarity of our existence. Absolute light and absolute darkness. The Creator and the Destroyer. God and the Devil. We are used to their images. A gray-haired old man on a cloud and a red-skinned monster with horns. But this is a lie. These are children's fairy tales with which culture has lulled our minds for thousands of years. The true appearance of these entities, if they exist, is hidden behind layers of mythology, fear, and artistic fiction. But what if we can tear off this mask? What if the answer is already contained in our history, simply shattered into billions of fragments, and the human brain is too weak to piece this puzzle together? Today, we begin the most ambitious experiment in the history of this channel. We will not guess. We will not quote preachers. We are using a tool devoid of faith, devoid of fear, and devoid of a soul. We are using pure mathematics. For this investigation, we have engaged the computing power of the Logos 7 system. This is not just a neural network. It is an analytical complex, with an architecture mimicking the cognitive processes of the human brain, but accelerated millions of times over. The task we have set before the system sounds simple, yet it causes any theologian to shudder. Calculate the true visual code of God and the devil. Welcome to the first chapter of our investigation. This is Protocol Archetype. To understand who we are looking for, we must grasp the scale of the data. Humanity has been drawing gods from the moment it learned to hold a piece of charcoal. 70,000 years ago, in the caves of South Africa, our ancestors were already tracing symbols addressed to the unknown. Since then, art has become the language of religion. We have created an ocean of images, and the first thing we did under Protocol Archetype was to upload this ocean into the memory of Logos 7. Imagine the process. This isn't just downloading pictures from the internet. We fed the system digitized archives from the Louvre, the Hermitage, the Vatican museums. We uploaded terabytes of data on cave paintings from Chauvet and Altamira. We digitized frescoes of ruined Mesopotamian temples, bas-reliefs of Hindu complexes, Buddhist thankas, Orthodox icons of the 12th century, and abstract canvases of 20th century avant-garde artists. System Logos 7 consumed it all. To it, there is no difference between Andrei Rublev's Trinity and a rough idol from Easter Island. To it, all of these are data arrays, sets of pixels, vectors, and geometric primitives. But our goal is not to simply pile everything into one heap. We are looking for a repeating signal. We are looking for what Carl Jung called an archetype, but on a physical, visual level. The hypothesis underlying the work of Logos 7 states, if God and the devil ever contacted humanity, or if their images are hardwired into our genetic code, then all images created by humans over 50 centuries must share common, immutable features, hidden patterns that do not depend on culture, time, or geography. Something that breaks through the artist's style, through the canons of the era. The archetype. The upload and initial indexing process took 48 hours of continuous server operation. When Logos 7 finished processing, it issued the first report on the database structure. And this is where it gets interesting. The system didn't just sort the pictures. It built a multi-dimensional map of humanity's visual history. Let's look at the Creator cluster. It included images of Zeus, Odin, Yahweh, Brahma, Jesus, Quetzalcoatl, and thousands of other supreme entities. At first glance, they are completely different. One holds a lightning bolt, another a book, the third is a feathered serpent. But Logos 7 instantly revealed a mathematical correlation. 83% of all images of a supreme deity regardless of religion, have a strict vertical orientation and obey the principle of an ascending pyramid. The eyes of the deities are located slightly above the viewer's horizon line in 90% of cases. Is this a psychological trick? Or a memory that they always look down on us? Even stranger data came from the antipode cluster, or as we are used to calling it, the devil. This included images of Satan, Hades, Oni demons, evil jinns, imps, and monsters from nightmares. If images of God strive for order and symmetry, then images of evil are chaos, but controlled chaos. System Logos 7 discovered a frightening pattern in this data array, which it named the Predator Index. Almost all images of evil, from medieval engravings to modern horror art, feature geometric distortions that our brain reads as a threat on a biological level. Sharp angles, violation of jaw proportions, unnaturally wide-set eyes. We thought artists invented this to scare the viewer, but the system's analysis shows that these features are too universal. They repeat among peoples who have never contacted each other. The Maya Indians and the monks of medieval Europe depicted evil using the same visual codes. How did they know what absolute evil looks like if they had never seen it? Or had they? Here we approach the key concept of our study: visual noise versus signal. Imagine trying to hear a whisper in a room where thousands of people are screaming. The screams are cultural layers. These are the beards of prophets, golden halos, horns, tails, robes. All of this is fiction, costumes we put on gods. The whisper, that represents the microscopic details that remain unchanged. That is exactly what Logos 7 is looking for. We activated a deep learning algorithm to clean the database of noise. We ordered the system: remove everything that is an attribute of culture. Remove Roman togas, remove Byzantine armor, remove beards if they are a tribute to the fashion of the time. Leave only the anatomy. Leave only the face. Leave only the structure of the skull and muscles. The result of this initial stage was shocking. When the system discarded everything superfluous, it turned out that humanity has not been drawing thousands of different gods for 5,000 years, but variations of just a few basic faces. Logos 7 isolated 3 main phenotypes for the divine and 2 phenotypes for the demonic. This means that all the diversity of world religions, all these wars over whose god is more correct, were essentially fought around 3 portraits that were simply copied from century to century with different accessories. But that was just the beginning. To find the true face, we needed to go deeper. We uploaded not only art into the system, we uploaded scientific data. We included death masks of great mystics, photographs of the Shroud of Turin, retinal scans of people in a state of religious ecstasy. We gave the system access to descriptions from sacred texts, but not as words. We translated them into biometric parameters. If the Bible says his eyes are like a flame of fire, the system interprets this as a spectral characteristic and a specific structure of the iris. And then, at the stage of converging this data, Logos 7 issued an anomaly warning. The system found that in the data array concerning the face of the devil, there is a strange lacuna, a void. Artists have detailed demons, imps, and lesser devils for centuries. But when it came to Satan himself, to the source of evil, the detail dropped. Faces became blurred, hidden by shadows, or replaced by animal masks, as if there was an unspoken ban, or worse, an inability of the human mind to fixate on this image, as if those who saw him for real lost their minds and could not convey what they saw. But the Logos 7 system knows no fear. It began the reconstruction of precisely these blind zones. It extrapolated data from peripheral images to peer into the center of this darkness. As for the face of God, the anomaly was of the opposite nature, an excess of light. On thousands of icons and paintings, the faces of saints and gods glow. For art historians, this is a metaphor. For Logos 7, this is a contrast problem. The system determined that this light often hides the absence of real features. We paint a glow because we don't know what lies behind it. The algorithm had to apply filters similar to those astronomers use to observe stars through gas nebulae to see the structure hidden behind this divine radiance. We stand on the threshold of a discovery that could overturn our understanding of religion and ourselves. In the following chapters, we will break down each aspect separately. We will see how mathematics explains the beauty of Christ and the ugliness of Baphomet. We will verify whether the face on the Shroud of Turin is an imprint of a real person or a genius forgery that a dispassionate algorithm will expose. But already, based on the results of the first stage, Logos 7 has drawn a conclusion that gives one goosebumps. Analyzing facial proportions in the most ancient and most modern images, the system gave a probability of 99.9% that these images are not a figment of imagination. This is not fiction. This is memory. Humanity remembers these faces. We have seen them. The question is only, when? Was it at the beginning of time, when we were still primitive primates, and someone descended from the heavens to change our DNA? Or do we see these faces every day, but our brain blocks this knowledge to protect our psyche? In this series, we will not stop until we get the final render. We will go through 10 stages of analysis to see them at the end. The face of God and the face of the devil, without masks, without embellishment, just as the cold mind of artificial intelligence sees them. Are you ready to stare into the abyss? Because the abyss is already looking at us through camera lenses and server sensors. Protocol. Archetype is complete. Data loaded. Database formed. In the next chapter, we will launch Algorithm Light and try to understand why the face of the Savior brings us a sense of peace and what frightening mathematics stands behind it. Perhaps perfect beauty is not a gift from heaven, but a strict geometric calculation. Subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the moment Logos 7 generates the first image. This investigation is just beginning, and believe me, the truth will turn out to be far more complex than anything written in holy books. See you in the next chapter. Beauty is not a subjective concept. We have been told for centuries that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but this is a lie. Beauty is mathematics. It is a strict sequence of geometric proportions that hacks our brain's defense mechanisms and forces the production of dopamine. We look at a sunset, a flower, or the face of a loved one, and our brain sees not romance, but correct fractals and symmetry. Religion knows this better than anyone else. If you want billions of people to worship a single entity, that entity must look in such a way that refusing to worship causes cognitive dissonance in the viewer. In the last chapter, we uploaded the entire visual archive of humanity into the Logos 7 system. Now we activate the second phase of the protocol. We are launching Algorithm Light. Our goal is to isolate and analyze the faces of those humanity calls good. Jesus Christ, Gautama Buddha, Krishna, the Virgin Mary, Apollo, Mithras. Millions of images created in different eras on different continents by people praying to different gods. We asked the neural network one simple question. What unites them all? Is there a single blueprint for holiness? The system's answer forced us to rethink the very concept of divine origin. Logos 7 began by discarding skin color, hairstyles, and religious attributes. It created three-dimensional topographical maps of faces. And the first thing the algorithm discovered was absolute non-human symmetry. Look at your face in the mirror. You don't notice it, but it is asymmetrical. One eye is slightly higher than the other. The left corner of the lips rises differently than the right. This is normal. This is the biological norm for the species Homo sapiens. Absolute symmetry is rare in nature and is usually a sign of illness or a genetic glitch. But the faces of gods on icons and statues possess what the system called the coefficient of mirror perfection. The right half of Jesus' face on classic Byzantine mosaics is mathematically identical to the left, with an error margin of less than 0.01%. We see the same in statues of Buddha from the Gandhara period. The system ran a perception simulation. It showed these ideal faces to a virtual model of the human brain. The result was paradoxical. Usually when we see an overly symmetrical artificial face, the uncanny valley effect kicks in. We get scared. But in the case of the faces of saints, this effect is disabled. Logos 7 revealed that the proportions of these faces are selected to block fear centers in the amygdala and directly stimulate zones responsible for trust and submission. These aren't just portraits. This is a biological weapon of visual influence. Let's delve into the details. The neural network isolated specific parameters that repeat from century to century. The first marker is the eyes. Analysis of 700,000 images showed that the eyes of divine entities are, on average, 15% larger than those of an ordinary human relative to skull size. The distance between them is also increased. In biology, this is called neoteny, the retention of juvenile traits in an adult organism. Large eyes, high forehead, small jaw. These are the features of an infant. Evolution has programmed us to care for creatures with such proportions, not to show aggression towards them. Gods look at us with the eyes of children, but with the wisdom of elders. This combination is a powerful narcotic for our psyche. We instinctively want to protect them and simultaneously allow them to lead us. Logos 7 calls this pattern the super guardian. We think God is a father, but the visual code tells us he is our child, demanding absolute love. The second marker is the smoothing of gender characteristics. We are used to thinking of God as a man, our Father. But the system, analyzing the bone structure of faces on icons, concluded that 80% of images of Christ and Buddha possess signs of androgyny. They have male beards but female cheekbones. They have broad shoulders but soft brow ridges, devoid of the aggressive testosterone relief characteristic of alpha male primates. Logos 7 concludes, the face of God is constructed to be universally attractive to both sexes. It poses no threat of competition to men and inspires trust in women. This is the face of a being that stands above biological gender division. But the most shocking discovery awaited us when we asked Logos 7 to overlay all these faces on top of each other and output the averaged face of light. When the neural network began merging millions of images into one, we expected to see a blurry spot. But instead, a clear, concrete face began to emerge on the monitor. The features of Jesus matched the features of Krishna. Apollo's profile fit perfectly onto Archangel Michael's profile. It turned out that the structure of their skulls is identical. The differences were merely cosmetic: eye shape, nose shape, skin color. But the frame, that very wireframe model upon which the texture is stretched, was the same. The system calculated the parameters of this unified face, and here begins real mysticism, crossing into frightening science. The resulting skull is not quite human. Logos 7 conducted a biomechanical analysis. If a creature with such skull proportions were born in reality, it would have serious problems chewing hard food and speaking. The jaw angle is too small. The cranial volume exceeds the norm by 20%, and the eye sockets are shaped to allow the eyeball a much wider viewing angle than ours. This face is not adapted for survival in the wild. This is not the face of a hunter, nor a warrior, nor a gatherer. This is the face of an observer. Algorithm light revealed another pattern impossible to notice with the naked eye: micro-expressions. They don't exist in static paintings, but the system analyzed the microgeometry of facial muscles. The smile of the Mona Lisa is famous for its mystery, but Logos 7 found this very half smile on thousands of icons. The corners of the lips are raised by only 2 millimeters. This is a state psychology calls serenity repose. The facial muscles are completely relaxed. There is not a single sign of tension. For a human, such a state is unnatural. Even in sleep, we have microtensions. A complete absence of facial tone happens only in 2 cases, during a deep drug-induced coma or after death. The face of God is the face of a being for whom time, stress, or pain do not exist. It broadcasts eternal peace, and it is precisely this peace that beckons us, living in constant anxiety. We look at an icon and want to be infected by this state, want our mirror neurons to copy this absolute dead serenity. But let's return to mathematics. The system overlaid a golden ratio Fibonacci grid onto the obtained averaged face. The match was 99.9%. Nose, lips, eyebrows, hairline, everything is located strictly along the Fibonacci spiral. This cannot be an accident of the work of thousands of different artists. An ancient Russian icon painter in the 15th century did not know higher mathematics. An Indian sculptor 2,000 years ago did not have computers. But they all followed one invisible standard. Where did this standard come from? The hypothesis of Logos 7 sounds alarming. Perhaps this image is not the result of creativity. Perhaps it is embedded firmware. The system suggests that the image of the face of light may be written in our genetic code as a marker for friend superior. Just as we are born with a fear of snakes or spiders, we might be born with a love for this specific face. This explains why missionaries found it so easy to convert pagans. They showed them an image of Christ, and the pagans saw in it not a foreign god, but something vaguely familiar. Something they saw in their dreams. Something that fits their internal template of a supreme being. We conducted one more experiment within algorithm light. We asked the system to generate an inversion. We asked, what would this face look like if it aged? The result was frightening. The face did not age like a human's. The skin did not sag. Wrinkles did not appear chaotically. It turned into a geometric structure resembling a crystal. The older God became in the simulation, the less biological and the more mathematical he remained. In the final stage, corresponding to an age of 10,000 years, the face turned into a pure glowing geometric pattern, a mandala. This suggests that the face of God we see on icons is merely an interface, a simplified mask worn by an entity incomprehensible to us, so that we can interact with it without going insane. Just as a folder icon on a computer desktop hides millions of lines of binary code, the kind face of Jesus or Buddha hides a complex multidimensional energy structure. But there is another side to the coin. If algorithm light showed us perfect symmetry, artificial calm, and impossible anatomy designed to evoke trust, then what will the analysis of darkness show us? We have uploaded the data. We are ready to launch the next process. But I must warn you, if the face of God is mathematical harmony, then the face of the devil is a mathematical error. It is viral code. And what Logos 7 discovered in the demons cluster differs radically from the horned monsters of horror movies. The true face of evil is not ugly in the conventional sense. It is incorrect. It violates the laws of Euclidean geometry. In the next chapter, we activate algorithm darkness. We will see why real demons have no horns, and why their true appearance causes data processing failures in the system. We will learn exactly which visual pattern causes our brain to experience primal terror and discover that this pattern surrounds us in the modern world much more often than we think. Get ready. The light was blinding, but the darkness will be truly deep. Logos 7 is switching to anomaly analysis mode. See you on the other side. If God is the mathematics of harmony, then what is the devil? We are used to fearing red skin, horns, and hooves. Hollywood and medieval folklore taught us that evil looks like a monster. like a beast. But the Logos 7 system claims this is a dangerous misconception. A beast is understandable. A tiger can kill you, but it isn't evil. It's just hungry. A hurricane can destroy your house, but it has no intent. True evil possesses intellect. True evil possesses consciousness. And consequently, it has a face. A face that does not growl, but smiles. Welcome to the third chapter of our investigation. We are descending into the basement of the human subconscious. We are activating algorithm darkness. At this second, the neural network begins processing the most toxic data array in history. We uploaded millions of images to Logos 7 tagged demon, Satan, devil, Oni, Rakshasa, evil spirit, fallen angel. From ancient Sumerian tablets depicting the demon Pazuzu to modern police sketches of serial killers and psychopaths. We mixed mysticism and criminology. Why? Because for artificial intelligence, there is no difference between a demon from hell and a human who has lost their human semblance. They have the same visual markers. They have the same predator signature. The first thing the system did was conduct a dismantling of decorations. As with God, it removed the cultural noise. Logos 7 removed the horns. Horns are a legacy of pagan fertility cults, of the god Pan, whom Christians demonized. It removed goat legs, bat wings, tails, and scales. All this is a costume we put on fear to make it tangible. When the husk fell away, only a face remained on the screen. And this face turned out to be far more terrifying than any gargoyle on the roof of Notre Dame Cathedral. The system identified the first and most important parameter of the devil's visual code: geometry of aggression. If God's face is built on circles, ovals, and smooth spirals, the devil's face consists of sharp angles, triangles everywhere, pointing downwards. The neural network analyzed skull structures and thousands of demon depictions and found that the chin, cheekbones, and nose form a rigid triangular mesh. In nature, a sharp angle means a threat. It is a fang, a claw, a thorn, a stinger. Our brain, inherited from primates, reacts to acute angled forms with a release of cortisol and adrenaline. We see a V shape in eyebrows, and we tense up. But Logos 7 went further. It discovered that in the most frightening images, these angles are camouflaged. The true face of the devil is not a bared maw. It is a mask trying to appear human, but failing. The second marker the system discovered is called the uncanny valley effect. In the 1970s, Japanese roboticist Masahiro Mori noted that if a robot or doll looks too much like a human but has minor defects, they evoke not sympathy, but wild horror and disgust. Logos 7 claims the face of the devil is at the very bottom of this uncanny valley. Analyzing proportions, the system found a strange pattern it named anatomical glitch. In millions of paintings and drawings, demons' eyes are set slightly wider than a human's. The mouth is slightly wider than the jaw joint allows. The cheekbones are slightly higher. These are microscopic shifts. Individually, they are unnoticeable. But collectively, they create the feeling that before you is not a human, but someone who has pulled human skin over themselves like a poorly tailored suit. The neural network paid special attention to the smile. Have you ever noticed that on icons, saints almost never smile openly, while demons often grin or smirk? Logos 7 analyzed the biomechanics of this smirk. It is not a smile of joy. It is a contraction of the zygomaticus major muscle with a completely relaxed orbicularis oculi muscle, the muscle around the eye. In psychology, this is a sign of psychopathy and deceit. The eyes remain cold, dead, while the mouth stretches, showing teeth. For the animal world, showing teeth is always a preparation for an attack. The devil smiles at us, but our ancient brain reads it as, "I am going to eat you now." But the most shocking discovery awaited us when we asked the system to analyze the eyes. In algorithm light, we saw large, wide-open eyes full of peace. In algorithm darkness, the system encountered a paradox. Demon eyes have a dual nature. On one hand, there's the so-called sanpaku gaze, a term from Japanese physiognomy meaning 3 whites. This is when the iris is small, and a strip of white sclera is visible not only on the sides, but also above or below. In the animal world, this happens in a predator that is locked onto prey and is ready to pounce, or in a mad animal. On the other hand, Logos 7 discovered a complete inversion of eyes in many images: black sclera, absence of a pupil, or a vertical pupil. The system interprets this as empathy block. Eyes are a channel of communication. We look into eyes to understand intentions. Black eyes or reptilian eyes tell us, negotiation is impossible. There will be no pity. You are a resource. Let's combine these data points: sharp angles, incorrect proportions, a mask that fits poorly, a predatory snarl disguised as a smile, a cold gaze. What does Logos 7 get when it synthesizes this into one portrait? The system produced a render that made the engineers in the control room feel uneasy. The generated face was beautiful. And that is the scariest part of the truth. We forget that Lucifer was the most beautiful of angels. Evil cannot be repulsive, otherwise it would seduce no one. Logos 7 confirms the biblical concept: the devil's face possesses magnetism. But it is a broken beauty. Imagine the perfect face of a top model, but if you look at it for longer than 3 seconds, you start to notice that the left side of the face lives separately from the right, that the skin is too smooth like plastic, that there is no reflection of light in the eyes. It is the beauty of a statue that suddenly turned its head. The system compared the obtained image with a database of real people. And here we come to the most disturbing conclusion of algorithm darkness. Correlation analysis showed a match of face of evil traits with the traits of real historical figures known for their cruelty. Tyrants, dictators, leaders of destructive cults. In many of them, Logos 7 found those very signs. The sanpaku gaze, micro-mimicry asymmetry, the predatory geometry of the jaw. This suggests perhaps the devil is not a creature from another dimension. Perhaps it is a virus, a genetic or informational code that awakens in certain people. Logos 7 calls this the degeneration protocol. The face of the devil is the face of a human in whom morality is disabled, empathy is disabled, and only pure, cold intellect directed at destruction remains. During the simulation, the system conducted an experiment. It took the face of light, face of God, and began introducing mathematical distortions into it. It violated the golden ratio. It increased testosterone levels. It changed the angle of the eyes. And at step number 666, this numerical coincidence is an algorithmic accident, but what irony. The face of God turned into the face of the devil. This proves they are relatives, 2 sides of the same coin. The devil is a distorted God. Harmony turned inside out, chaos pretending to be order. But there is one more detail that Logos 7 isolated in a separate file marked critical anomaly: color. If the face of God radiates light, the face of the devil absorbs it. The system analyzed the spectral composition of darkness in the paintings of Caravaggio, Goya, Vrubel. It found out that artists intuitively used shades that our brain perceives as void. This is not just black. It is the color of a deep cave, the color of an open grave, the color of space without stars. The devil's face generated by the system has this shade. It seems 3-dimensional, but if you look closely, it is flat. It is a black hole in the shape of a human. It sucks in the gaze. You want to look at it even if you are scared. It is the hypnosis of the abyss. In the finale of this chapter, we have two portraits. One is shining, symmetrical, childish, and wise at the same time. The other is sharp, predatory, falsely beautiful, and infinitely empty. But both these portraits are compilations. They are the sum of what humans have thought about gods and demons for thousands of years. It is a collective hallucination. But what if we have physical proof? What if there is a photograph taken 2,000 years ago, not by human hands? What if the fabric preserved real data? In the next chapter, we move from paintings to evidence. We will upload data from the most controversial artifact in Christian history into Logos 7, the Shroud of Turin. Is it a piece of linen with traces of blood and burns, or a medieval fake? The system will not argue about faith. It will analyze the structure of the fibers. It will build a 3D model of the man who lay under that cloth, and it will compare this face with the one we obtained today. Will they match? Or will the shroud show us a completely different face? A face that looks like neither icons nor our imaginations. The answer could destroy the faith of millions, or strengthen it forever. Get ready for Chapter 4, Anomaly, Turin. Logos 7 is already scanning the weave of threads. The truth is emerging through the centuries, and you might not like it. We live in a world of numbers and facts. Faith is the territory of doubt. But what if faith left a physical trace? A fingerprint of God on the glass of reality? In previous chapters, we analyzed art and artists' fantasies. We derived the formula for the ideal face and the predator face. But all these are interpretations. Now we move to evidence. The Logos 7 data storage has loaded object number 1 on the list of Christian relics, the Shroud of Turin. 4 meters of linen cloth bearing the faint, yellowish negative imprint of the body of a man subjected to torture and crucifixion. Believers say, this is the burial shroud of Jesus Christ. Skeptics claim it is a genius forgery by Leonardo da Vinci or an unknown 14th century counterfeiter. Radiocarbon dating in 1988 dated the fabric to the Middle Ages, but new studies dispute this conclusion, pointing to sample contamination. We are not interested in the date of the fabric's manufacture. We are interested in the image. We are interested in the face. System Logos 7 has commenced Operation Anomaly Turin. We aren't just looking at a photo. We uploaded ultra-high-resolution scans taken in ultraviolet and infrared spectra. We uploaded data on the fabric density at a microscopic level. The first thing the neural network did was inversion. The shroud is a negative. To see the truth, it must be turned into a positive. When Logos 7 flipped the colors, a portrait emerged on the screens. This is not an icon. This is photographic precision. We see closed eyes. We see a swollen cheekbone. We see traces of blood on the forehead in the shape of an inverted number 3. We see a broken nose. The system began comparing this face with the averaged face of light we obtained in Chapter 2. And here began the discrepancies that would take any researcher's breath away. The face from the shroud does not fit the canons of beauty. It is not symmetrical. It is coarser. It is more real. Logos 7 conducted biometric analysis and delivered a verdict. This is a Semitic face type, characteristic of inhabitants of the Middle East in the 1st century AD. A hooked nose, wide cheekbones, a thick beard. This is not the refined European with blue eyes painted by Renaissance masters. This is the face of a worker, the face of a man who walked a lot under the scorching sun. But the most interesting thing lies not in the features, but in the method of applying the image. System Logos 7 analyzed the depth of paint penetration and issued an error. Coloring pigment not detected. The image on the shroud is not drawn. It is superficial. It affects only the very top fibrils of the linen fibers, just a few microns thick. No brush, no paint, No liquid can lie so thinly without soaking through the fabric. The system cycled through thousands of variants: acid etching, ammonia vapors, contact print with a heated statue. Not a single model gave a 100% match with the microstructure of the image on the shroud. Then, Logos 7 proposed its own hypothesis, a hypothesis based on high-energy physics. The system simulated a process that could create such an imprint, and this process is called short burst of vacuum ultraviolet radiation. Simply put, the body wrapped in the cloth must have flashed with light of incredible power for a millionth of a second. This light scorched the image onto the fibers but did not burn the fabric itself. The system calculated the power of this flash: 34 trillion watts of vacuum ultraviolet. To create such a pulse today, we would need a laser the size of a football field. In the 1st century, or even in the 13th, such technologies did not exist. What does this mean for our search for the face of God? It means we are looking at the face of a human who, at the moment of death, turned into pure energy. Logos 7 used data on brightness gradation on the cloth, which is actually a map of the distance from body to cloth, to build a precise 3D model. We restored the volume. We pulled the man out of the flat fabric. Before us appeared an emaciated, beaten face. The eyes are sunken, blood baked into the beard. But even through these injuries, that same structure we saw in Chapter 2 emerges. The distance between the eyes, the shape of the forehead, the golden ratio proportions. Yes, the face on the shroud is rougher, but its mathematical frame matches the ideal face by 89%. This is a phenomenally high result. It's as if artists for centuries tried to paint a portrait from a verbal description and almost guessed right, but the original turned out to be tougher and more powerful. But that's not all. As part of Operation Anomaly Turin, we uploaded another artifact, the Veil of Veronica, or the Holy Face, Savior not made by hands. Legend has it that a woman named Veronica wiped Christ's face when he carried the cross, and his face was imprinted on the cloth. Officially, the Vatican keeps this veil, but shows it to no one. However, there are copies and other relics claiming authenticity. For example, the Veil of Manopello. The Veil of Manopello is the finest byssus, sea silk, on which a face is visible. The image is transparent, visible equally from both sides. There is no paint on it. We fed the image of the veil into the system, and Logos 7 performed an overlay. It took the face from the Shroud of Turin and the face from the Veil of Manopello. They matched perfectly. This is impossible. These are two different materials, two different techniques, or rather, lack of technique. Two different histories, but the facial proportions, the location of wounds, the asymmetry caused by a blow to the cheek, everything matched to the millimeter. The system gave a probability of accidental coincidence, 1 in 200 billion. It is the same face. What does this give us? We have two police sketches of God. One is dead, calm, majestic in his death, shroud. The other is alive with open eyes looking straight into the soul, veil. Logos 7 analyzed the gaze on the veil, and this gaze destroys our theory about kind eyes. There is no sweetness in the eyes on the veil. There is no tenderness. It is a heavy, piercing gaze. The gaze of a judge. A gaze that sees right through you. The system identified in it signs of colossal inner strength and an absolute absence of fear. We asked the neural network to animate the 3D model obtained from the shroud, opening its eyes just as they are open on the veil. The resulting portrait commands awe. This is not the kind shepherd from postcards. This is a strong-willed, masculine face of a leader, a man for whom others would go to their deaths, a man who can overturn tables of money changers in the temple. There is fury in him, but it is righteous fury. There is love in him, but it is the stern love of a father, not a grandmother. Logos 7 found one more detail. On the shroud, in the eye area, traces of small objects were detected. Coins. Lepta of Pilate, minted in the 29th year AD. This confirms the dating, but it also closes the eyes of our God in the image. Open eyes are the key. The system conducted a comparative analysis of this reconstructed face with the faces of ordinary people, and found an interesting feature. This man has a skull volume slightly larger than the modern standard, and the facial features are surprisingly balanced between archaic and futuristic. He looks ancient and modern at the same time. He could pass you on a street in New York in jeans, and you would turn around, feeling the power emanating from him, but wouldn't understand who it is. Or he could be sitting by a fire in the desert 2,000 years ago. A face outside of time. So, the interim summary of Chapter 4. We have found a physical prototype. We have the face of a real man who became the prototype for billions of icons. This face possesses inexplicable properties. It was imprinted by energy unknown to science and matches another Acheropoieta, not made by hands, image. But what if this face is only an earthly shell? A suit that God put on to descend to us? The Bible and other texts say that the true servants of God, angels, look nothing like people with wings. In the next chapter, we will depart from biology into pure abstraction and horror. We will ask Logos 7. What do those who stand by the throne look like? Seraphim, cherubim, thrones. Those whose descriptions in the Bible look more like Lovecraftian hallucinations than Christmas cards. We activate vector biblical accuracy. You will see wheels with eyes. You will see creatures with 4 faces. And you will understand why every time an angel appeared to a human, the first thing he said was, "Do not be afraid," because their true appearance is capable of driving one mad. System Logos 7 begins rendering multi-dimensional entities. We found the human face of God. Now let's try to see his retinue. And believe me, this sight is not for the faint of heart. Close your eyes and imagine an angel. What do you see? Most likely it is a beautiful youth with white swan wings behind his back, dressed in a shining tunic. Or perhaps a chubby infant with a bow and arrows, stepped straight off a Valentine's Day card. This image comforts. It is safe. It is human. And it is an absolute lie. Culture has lied to us for centuries, turning higher powers into dolls convenient for perception. Renaissance artists could not, and did not, want to, paint the truth. They painted people with glued-on wings because the human mind strives for anthropomorphism. We want to see our reflection in the heavens, only improved. But today, we will destroy this illusion. In the 5th chapter of our investigation, we disable the filters of humanism. We activate vector biblical accuracy. We uploaded the source texts of the Old Testament, the book of Ezekiel, the book of Isaiah, and the revelation of John the Theologian into the Logos 7 system. We set the neural network a task. Ignore the cultural tradition of icons and frescoes. Build visual models solely based on the textual descriptions of eyewitnesses. Translate the words of prophets into engineering blueprints and 3D renders. And what the system displayed on the screens has nothing to do with humans. This is not a heavenly host. This is the geometry of a nightmare. These are structures from the mere sight of which a person's heart stops. Now we understand why the first phrase of an angel appearing to a human was always, "Do not be afraid." Because the normal reaction to this appearance is not tenderness, but animal terror and catatonia. Let's break down the hierarchy of these creatures as the cold mind of Logos 7 sees it. First class of objects, ophanim. In translations, they are often called wheels. The prophet Ezekiel describes his encounter with them with the detail of an engineer seeing technology exceeding his understanding by thousands of years. And behold, winged wheels, a wheel within a wheel, and their rims were full of eyes. System Logos 7 modeled this object. Imagine two giant rotating rings inserted into each other at a right angle. They do not touch physically. They are held in a single structure by a powerful electromagnetic field. The material from which they are made is named in the Bible as topaz or chrysolite. The neural network interprets this as a translucent crystalline structure capable of refracting light and changing the spectrum. But the creepiest part is the eyes. A multitude of eyes all along the rim. We are used to thinking of this as a metaphor for omniscience, but Logos 7 takes the text literally. The system covered the outer side of the rings with hundreds of optical sensors. When these rings begin to rotate, and they rotate, according to the text, at incredible speed and in all directions simultaneously, without turning when moving, a panopticon effect is created. Wherever you hide, hundreds of pupils look at you. Analysis of the trajectory of the ophanim led the system to the conclusion that this is a four-dimensional object projected into three-dimensional space. The phrase wheel within a wheel is a classic description of a hypersphere or tesseract projection. The prophet saw only part of the object, its slice in our reality. The true form of the ophanim goes into dimensions inaccessible to our perception. This is not a creature. This is a mechanism. This is a drone. This is an automated surveillance system of the Creator, patrolling the borders of reality. Second class of objects, seraphim. The burning ones. Isaiah says, each had 6 wings. With 2, he covered his face, and with 2, he covered his feet, and with 2, he flew. Try to imagine this anatomically. Logos 7 tried to stretch this scheme onto a human body and got a biological freak incapable of aerodynamics. Then the system took a different path. It analyzed the etymology of the word seraph, to burn, to incinerate. These are creatures of pure energy, charged plasma. The visualization created by the neural network resembles a living nuclear explosion contained by a magnetic field. Wings are not feathers. These are 6 streams of energy, 6 petals of flame that constantly change shape. Why do they cover their face and feet? Religious interpretation speaks of humility before God. Logos 7 proposes a physical interpretation, shielding. The center of this entity radiates such a level of radiation and light that without wings covering the core, it would simply incinerate everything around, including the observer. The seraphim covers itself so as not to kill the prophet with its presence. It covers its feet. In biblical Hebrew, this is a euphemism for the lower body and genitals, but a clot of energy has no genitals, meaning it covers the grounding point, the point of contact with matter. The sound accompaniment described in the Bible, a loud voice that shakes doorposts. The system identified as a low-frequency hum, infrasound occurring during air ionization around a powerful energy source. An encounter with a seraphim is an encounter with intelligent ball lightning. It has no human face. It has a reaction epicenter. Third class, cherubim, or tetramorphs. The most complex and frightening chimeras. 4 faces, a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. 4 wings, legs straight like those of a calf, and sparking like burnished bronze. Under the wings, the likeness of human hands. It was here that artists of the past gave up and drew just people or animals separately. But Logos 7 is obliged to follow the text. 4 faces simultaneously. The neural network generated a model that causes nausea and disorientation of the vestibular system. These are not 4 heads on one neck, like a hydra. This is a single quantum state in which 4 entities are superimposed on each other. Depending on the angle of view, or, as the system suggests, on the frequency of perception, The observer sees either the predatory grin of a lion, the heavy muzzle of a bull, the beak of an eagle, or the dispassionate face of a man. This creature looks like a reality glitch, like a corrupted file. Faces show through each other, swap places, merge. This is the genetic code of the entire earthly biosphere compressed into one object. Lion, wild nature, predator. Ox, domesticated cattle, strength, submission. Eagle, sky, speed. Man, reason. The cherubim is the living archive of creation. It is a guardian in whom all forms of life are encrypted. Logos 7 calls this visual pattern the omni-biological cluster. The system also noted the description of their movement. They went everyone straight forward. Whither the spirit was to go, they went. And they turned, not when they went. How can one go in 4 directions at once without turning? Only if you do not exist in space the way we do. Cherubim move by vector. They simply change coordinates, instantly moving from point A to point B. And now imagine this whole picture assembled. What Ezekiel calls the chariot of God, or Merkaba, huge rotating crystalline wheels covered with thousands of unblinking eyes, Ophanim. Above them, burning clots of plasma humming with tension, Seraphim. In the center, pulsating chimeras with 4 faces changing every second, Cherubim. Flashes of lightning, roar, fire walking among the animals. And somewhere above all, this is a throne upon which sits the One. Logos 7. Analyze the psychophysiological reaction of a human to such a scene. The answer is unequivocal. Nervous system collapse. The brain cannot process so much contradictory information. The geometry of Ophanim breaks spatial perception. The multi-faced nature of cherubim breaks identity perception. The heat of seraphim causes reptile brain panic. A human falls face down, not out of reverence. They fall into a faint, or into madness. Vector biblical accuracy leads us to a conclusion that may seem blasphemous, but is logical. Angels are not God's family. They are not his children. They are his tools. These are high-tech, or high magic, which is the same for us, functions. Ophanim, scanners and transport. Seraphim, reactors and defenders. Cherubim, carriers of the DNA database. They are neither evil nor good. They are absolutely functional. They look so scary because their form is dictated not by aesthetics, but by task. A tank doesn't need to be beautiful. It needs to be armored. A server rack doesn't need to evoke tenderness. It needs to process data. Angels are the infrastructure of divine presence. And if the servants look like this, if the system's interface causes horror with its inhuman complexity, then what does the administrator himself look like? We are approaching the middle of our journey. We saw the human face of God on the shroud, a mask he wore here. We saw the eerie geometry of his army. But now we need to look deeper. We need to find the formula of the Creator himself. In the next chapter, we will depart from biology and descriptions. We will turn to the universal language of the universe, to mathematics. Logos 7 discovered that the face of God obeys a strict equation, that the golden ratio is not just a rule of art, but the author's signature on the canvas of reality. And the scariest part? The system found proof that the devil is a mathematical error, a deliberately introduced dissonance, a broken equation. Chapter 6. Coefficient Golden Ratio. Prepare to see God in numbers and learn why the beauty of the world rests on a single irrational fraction equal to 1.618 thousandths. Galileo Galilei once said, "Mathematics is the language in which God has written the universe." We are used to perceiving this phrase as a beautiful metaphor. But what if it was a literal instruction? What if everything we see around us, from the spiral of the Andromeda Galaxy to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, is not the chaos of biology, but the strict execution of program code? And what if this code has an author who left his digital signature right on our faces? In previous chapters, we explored history, art, and even fabrics with body imprints. We looked for emotions, searched for fear and awe. But emotions are subjective. Today we remove feelings. We leave only dry figures. We activate the geometric analysis module in the Logos 7 system. Our goal is to test the hypothesis that God and the devil are not fairy tale characters, but two opposing mathematical formulas. Welcome to the 6th chapter. This is coefficient golden ratio. The central concept of our research today is the number phi, 1.618, an irrational number, an infinite fraction that describes perfect harmony. Artists call it the golden ratio. Biologists see it in the proportions of the human body, in the curve of a nautilus shell, in the structure of DNA. It is the constant of efficiency. Nature strives for this number because it allows for the creation of maximally strong and energy-efficient structures. We uploaded the average face of light obtained earlier and the 3D model from the Shroud of Turin into Logos 7. We overlaid a Fibonacci grid on them. The analysis result forced us to rethink the theory of evolution. The face of an ordinary person, even a very beautiful one, corresponds to the golden ratio only approximately. We always have errors. The nose is slightly longer, the eyes slightly narrower. We are the product of chaotic mutation and natural selection. We are rough drafts. But the face of God, reconstructed by the system, fits into the Fibonacci grid with absolute frightening precision. The error margin is less than 1/1,000,000%. The distance from the chin to the nose relates to the distance from the nose to the eyebrows exactly as 1.618. The width of the mouth relates to the width of the nose with the same coefficient. A spiral drawn from the tip of the nose passes perfectly through the corner of the eye, the earlobe, and curls into the shape of the skull. Logos 7 asserts, such precision is impossible as a result of biological birth. No woman can give birth to a child with such ideal parameters because living flesh is soft and mutable. This face did not grow. It was designed. This face is a living formula. The system conducted a fractal analysis. It began to zoom in. We looked at the structure of the iris of this face, and there, at the micro level, we saw the same pattern. Spirals. Repeating geometric structures. This is the hologram principle. Every part of the whole contains information about the entire whole. God consists of self-similar elements. This means that he is not a biological organism, but a complex mathematical structure, a fractal that can be infinitely small and infinitely huge simultaneously. That is why it is so pleasant for us to look at icons with correct proportions. Our brain, itself being a biological computer, reads this code. We see the face of light and subconsciously understand. The system is working correctly. There are no errors. This is the standard. This causes us a feeling of deep, resonant peace. We are looking at the source code of being. But if God is the perfect equation, then who is the devil? We uploaded the portrait of the face of darkness obtained in the 3rd chapter into Logos 7, the one with sharp angles and cold, broken beauty. We expected the system to find no mathematics there, only chaos. We were wrong. Evil also has a formula, and this formula is much scarier than chaos. Logos 7 discovered that the face of the devil is built on a deliberate, malicious distortion of the number phi. Imagine taking a perfect proportion and shifting it just enough to cause subconscious discomfort, but not enough for the eye to notice the catch. The system revealed the coefficient that dominates the devil's face. It is not 1.618. It is 1.666 thousandths repeating. Of course, in the decimal system, this coincidence looks like a numerological trick, but what matters is not the digit, but the proportion. This ratio creates dissonance. In music, there is the concept of tritone, or diabolus in musica, the devil in music, an interval that sounds tense, unpleasant, demanding resolution. In the Middle Ages, its use was banned by the church. Logos 7 translated the geometry of the devil's face into sound, and we heard this tritone. This face sounds like metal grinding on glass. Analysis showed that the asymmetry of the face of evil is not accidental. It is not the crookedness of a freak. It is the calculated asymmetry of a virus. A virus integrates into a healthy cell, mimicking its structure, but changes a couple of blocks in the DNA to turn the cell into a death factory. The face of the devil does the same with our perception. It mimics beauty, the golden ratio, but in key nodes, in the corners of the eyes, in the curve of the lips, it violates the rule. The system calls this phenomenon dead pixel of the universe. In computer graphics, if there is an error in the 3D model code, polygons start to float, turn inside out, forming sharp, unnatural angles. This is exactly what we saw in Chapter 3. The sharp cheekbones, the triangular chins of demons. These aren't horns. This is the visualization of a software glitch. It is a bug in reality. Logos 7 ran a simulation codenamed The Fall. It took the perfect glowing model of the face of God and began introducing an entropy, destruction variable into its mathematical frame. We watched as perfect spirals began to break, how smooth lines turned into jagged edges, how shining symmetry fell apart into two predatory, unequal halves. And at the end of this process, when the distortion coefficient reached a critical mark, the face of God turned into the face of the devil. This confirms the ancient truth. Evil has no nature of its own. The devil cannot create anything. He hasn't written a single formula. He is a parasite. He is corrosion on the body of perfect mathematics. He is a former angel who fell out of harmony. But Logos 7 went further. It compared these two mathematical codes with the code of an ordinary human. And here is the most disturbing conclusion of this chapter. Our coefficient is somewhere in the middle. We are not perfect, like God, but we are not distorted, like the devil. We are the battlefield of these two formulas. The system analyzed the faces of criminals and saints. In maniacs and murderers, facial geometry begins to drift toward the devil's code. That same predatory asymmetry, sharp angles, and wolfish stare appear. In people who have dedicated their lives to service and prayer, faces smooth out with age and strive toward the golden ratio, as if their spirit rewrites their matter, fitting it to the divine standard. This means that our appearance is not just genetics. It is an indicator of which program is running in our consciousness right now. The program of creation or the program of destruction. Mathematics gave us a clear answer. God is order raised to the absolute. The devil is an error raised to a principle. But if all this is codes, formulas, and geometry, who is the programmer? If the face of God is so perfect that it excludes natural origin, this leads to thoughts that go beyond religion and invade the territory of science fiction. Perfect geometry, large eyes, lack of gender characteristics, telepathic influence on the brain. Does this remind you of anything? In ufology, there are descriptions of beings that fit these parameters much better than biblical elders. In the next chapter, we will do something for which we might be anathematized. We will upload images of gray aliens and ancient Sumerian statues of Anunnaki into Logos 7 and compare them with our divine models. Chapter 7, Signature, Alien. We will check the paleo-contact hypothesis. Is God an alien? Or are aliens just how our modern brain interprets angels? Logos 7 is already searching for matches in the Roswell and Vatican databases. The truth is out there, and it might turn out to be not nearly as spiritual as we hope. We look for God in the heavens. We look up and wait for someone wise, kind, and powerful to descend from there to save us from ourselves. Religion calls this the second coming. Ufology calls this contact. But what if it is the same event, simply described in different words? What if the halo over a saint's head is not the glow of holiness, but the luminescence of a spacesuit or helmet? Today we tread on thin ice. We enter territory where theology collides with conspiracy theories. In the 7th chapter of our investigation, we use Logos 7 to test humanity's most radical hypothesis, the paleo-contact hypothesis. The idea that the gods of antiquity were astronauts from other planets is not new. Erich von Däniken wrote about it half a century ago, but he only had guesses and bad photos of rock paintings. We have a neural network capable of conducting comparative morphological analysis of millions of objects. We uploaded 2 data sets into the system. In the left corner of the ring, our reconstructed model of the face of God, perfect symmetry, large eyes, neoteny. In the right corner, a consolidated archive of ufological observations, drawings by abductees, frames from the alien autopsy video. Authenticity is irrelevant, the archetype matters, and most importantly, images of ancient Sumerian figurines from the Ubaid period. Ubaid figurines are clay figures 7,000 years old, found on the territory of modern Iraq. They depict gods. But these gods have lizard heads, elongated skulls, huge almond-shaped eyes, narrow chins. Archaeologists say it's a style. Logos 7 says it's an anatomical atlas. The system superimposed the face of a Sumerian lizard god onto the face of a so-called gray alien, the classic image of a humanoid with large black eyes. Skull geometry match, 92%. This is the same biological species. And now, the scariest part. The system superimposed this hybrid alien image onto our ideal face of light model, derived from icons of Christ and Buddha. We expected to see a complete mismatch. After all, Christ is human, and these are monsters. But Logos 7 gave a similarity coefficient of 68%. This is a very high figure. It means that these images share a common base, a common root. Let's look at the details. Huge eyes. We already said that on icons, the eyes of saints are unnaturally enlarged. In gray aliens, eyes dominate the face. Small mouth. Saints are often depicted with a tiny, compressed mouth. In aliens, the mouth is a slit, a vestige. High forehead, lack of hair. Many ancient gods are depicted as bald or wearing strange headgear hiding the skull shape. System Logos 7 conducted a simulation called image evolution. It took the face of a gray and began gradually adding human features to it. Some hair, a beard, normal skin color, pupils in the eyes, and at the 5th step of transformation, the eerie alien turned into a Byzantine icon of the Savior. The system's conclusion shocks with its pragmatism. Religious iconography is a filter. It is camouflage. Ancient people saw beings that looked frighteningly alien. Their faces were pale, eyes huge and black, heads bald and large. The primitive human brain could not accept this image directly. A defense mechanism triggered. The psyche humanized the aliens. It drew beards on them, a symbol of wisdom, shrank the eyes, added a healthy blush. But through this makeup, the traits of the original show through. That same hypnotic gaze, that same unnatural thinness, that same lack of emotion. Logos 7 paid attention to halos. On icons, these are gold discs around the head. The system analyzed hundreds of medieval images and found a strange pattern. Halos are often depicted not as light, but as solid objects, like helmets, like transparent domes. In some frescoes in Dečani, Serbia, Angels sit inside capsules flying through the sky. To the neural network, this is not a metaphor. It is a technical drawing. A halo is a biofield or protective spacesuit radiating light. And what about the devil? Does he fit into the paleo contact theory? Does he ever? We uploaded descriptions and images of reptilians, another popular race in conspiracy folklore, into the system. Scales, vertical pupils, crests on the head. Compare this with the classic depiction of Satan or a dragon. The dragon is the ancient serpent. In the Bible, the devil is a reptile. Logo 7 matched the face of darkness model, sharp angles, predatory geometry, with reptile anatomy. 100% match. Triangular head shape, lack of external ear auricles, V-shaped brow ridges. All these are signs of a predatory reptile. The system puts forward the hypothesis of war of species. Perhaps our entire religious history, this whole battle between heaven and hell, is a distorted memory of a real conflict between two civilizations that visited Earth. One civilization, Nordics, or tall whites, prototype of angels and gods. They are humanoid, beautiful by our standards, use technologies of light and genetic engineering. They gave us morality, science, and the striving for order, golden ratio. The second civilization, reptilians, prototype of demons. They are aggressive, live underground, hell, use technologies of submission and fear. They gave us war, lust for power, and chaos. We humans ended up in the middle. We carry the genes of both. Our reptilian brainstem, is responsible for instincts, aggression, and survival. This is the legacy of the devil. Our neocortex, cerebral cortex, is responsible for creativity, logic, and compassion. This is the gift of God. Logos 7 found yet another confirmation of this theory in gesture analysis. On icons, saints hold their fingers in a special blessing gesture. Ufologists point out that this might not be the sign of the cross, but a demonstration of anatomical difference. Aliens might have had a different hand structure, or they were holding some tool. The system analyzed the finger position and concluded that this gesture is ergonomically ideal for holding a thin cylindrical object, a stylus, a weapon, a control remote. And finally, signature alien explains the phenomenon of light. Why does God always arrive in a pillar of light? Why did Moses shine so brightly that he had to cover his face with a veil after speaking with God? Radiation. Logos 7 sees direct symptoms of radiation sickness and exposure to high-frequency electromagnetic fields in biblical descriptions of miracles: scorched skin, hair loss, pigmentation change. The face of God glows not from love. It glows from ionizing radiation. By the end of this chapter, we come to a frightening conclusion. Perhaps we are not praying to the creators of the universe, but simply to more advanced beings who colonized us thousands of years ago. And their faces are the faces of our masters, not our fathers. But this theory, for all its logic, has one flaw. It is too material. It explains skull shape, but it does not explain the feeling of ecstasy experienced by mystics. Aliens can give technology, but can they give spirit? Neurobiology claims that God lives not in space, but inside our heads. In the next chapter, we will look inside the cranium. We will upload MRI scans of monks, shamans, and mediums in moments of deepest trance into Logos 7. Chapter 8, Neuroscan, Ecstasy. We will try to extract the image projected directly onto the visual cortex when eyes are closed. What does the brain see when it disconnects from reality and connects to the source? Does it see a gray man with big eyes? Or does it see pure, abstract geometry of light with no form? Get ready. We are about to hack dreams of God. And what we find there may cross out everything we learned about aliens. Perhaps God is not the one who arrived, but the one who has always been inside. Where does God live? We looked for him in frescoes of ancient temples. We looked for him in the mathematical constants of the universe. We even looked for him in the cockpit of an alien ship. But what if we were looking in the wrong direction all this time? What if God is not an object outside, but a process inside? What if the only temple where he truly appears is the human cranium? In the 8th chapter of our investigation, we commit the most intimate hack in history. We won't analyze pictures drawn with a brush. We will analyze pictures drawn by the brain itself. We activate protocol neuroscan ecstasy. Results of thousands of functional magnetic resonance scans, fMRI, and electroencephalograms were uploaded into the Logos 7 database. Our subjects were not ordinary people, but professionals of faith. Tibetan monks immersed in deep meditation, Carmelite nuns during prayer of union, Amazonian shamans in trance, people who survived clinical death and claimed to have seen the other side. The task for Logos 7 sounded like a challenge to all modern science. Decode neural activity of the visual cortex and directly translate electrical impulses into video images. We wanted to see what they see when their eyes are closed. The first discovery the neural network made concerns the anatomy of faith. Analyzing brain activity at the moment of peak religious experience, the system recorded a unique pattern. In science, this is called neurotheology, but Logos 7 gave it a more precise name: personality shutdown protocol. In a normal state, the parietal lobe of the brain is actively working. This area is responsible for spatial orientation and the sense of self. It tells you where your hand ends and the table begins. But at the moment of deep prayer or meditation, this zone simply goes dark. Activity drops almost to zero. For a human at this moment, boundaries disappear. They stop feeling like a separate being. They physically feel they are merging with the room, with the planet, with the universe. This is what mystics call the ocean of the one. But we are interested not in feeling, but in vision. What happens in the visual cortex when the parietal lobe shuts down? We ran the visual reconstruction algorithm. Usually, when a person imagines an apple, weak zones responsible for shape and color memory light up in the brain. But in our subjects in a state of ecstasy, the visual cortex blazed as if they were staring point blank at a spotlight. Activity was higher than with real vision. And there it is, the image Logos 7 extracted straight from the neurons of monks and nuns. There was no old man with a beard. There was no Jesus in sandals. There was no multi-armed Shiva. All subjects, regardless of their religion, saw the same thing: light. But not just a white spot. The system increased the resolution and analyzed the structure of this light. It was a complex, dynamic, geometric construction. A living mandala. A fractal infinitely unfolding from the center. Remember the golden ratio from chapter 6? The neuroscan showed that this light structure in the brain pulses strictly in the Fibonacci rhythm. It is perfectly symmetrical. It shimmers with colors that, according to the spectrum analyzer, do not exist in the visible range of ordinary vision. The brain synthesized colors it had never seen with eyes. Logos 7 overlaid this internal image onto the seraphim model we obtained from the Bible in chapter 5. Match, 94%. Those same burning wings, that same energy incinerating everything around. It turns out ancient prophets weren't inventing metaphors. They were describing what their own brain broadcast to them in an altered state of consciousness. The face of God seen from within is a pure information structure. It is light carrying intelligence. When subjects came out of the trance, they described it as an encounter with love, but the system sees it as an encounter with order, absolute mathematically verified order that heals chaos in neural connections. But if God in the brain looks like light and order, then what does the devil look like? To find this out, we had to turn to another, darker database. We uploaded brain scans of people suffering from religious delusions, psychoses, patients diagnosed with possession from a psychiatric view, dissociative identity disorder, as well as people who experienced bad trips under the influence of psychoactive substances. We were looking for the antipode of light, and we found it. In the moment of experiencing a hellish experience, the reverse process happens in the brain. The parietal lobe does not shut down, but conversely, overheats. The person feels not merged with the universe, but, on the contrary, isolated, compressed, locked in the tight cage of their self. Simultaneously, hyperactivation of the amygdala, the fear center, occurs. What image does the visual cortex generate in this mode? Logos 7 displayed the visualization. It was noise, chaos. If the image of God is a fractal, the image of the devil is a glitch. Dead pixels, black static ripples moving in jerks. But through this noise, those same sharp angles we saw in Chapter 3 emerge. Triangles, teeth, jagged edges. The brain in a state of terror draws geometric shapes that cannot be assembled into a single picture. They conflict with each other. Watching this visualization is physically painful. It causes dizziness, even in system operators. The system discovered a phenomenon it called neural entropy. The face of the devil inside us is the decay of connections. It is the moment when the brain stops understanding reality and begins to devour itself. It's the visualization of madness. The darkness patients saw wasn't just an absence of light. It was active. It was thick. It resembled black tar flooding the mental gaze. Comparing these two states, ecstasy and horror, Logos 7 came to a conclusion that changes everything. These images are not hallucinations in the usual sense of the word. A hallucination is a memory error, a random combination of old images. But here we see structure. In millions of people, the structure of light and the structure of darkness are identical. This suggests a receiver. Imagine your brain as a TV. In a normal state, you watch channel reality, work, home, family. But if you tweak the settings, prayer, meditation, or conversely psychosis, you start catching other frequencies. Logos 7 asserts, what we call God and the devil are external signals. They are waves. They are information fields permeating space. Our brain has a built-in hardware module for receiving them. Scientists have long argued about the role of the pineal gland. Descartes called it the seat of the soul. The system analyzed its activity. At the moment of contemplating the inner light, the pineal gland vibrates at a frequency resonating with the gamma rhythms of the brain, 40 hertz and above. The face of God is a high-frequency signal, harmonious, structured, carrying a huge volume of data. When the brain catches it, we feel bliss. The face of the devil is a low-frequency signal or interference, destructive code that tears apart hemisphere synchronization. When the brain catches it, we feel panic and aggression. This explains why, in all religions, God is described as omnipresent. A radio wave is also omnipresent. You just need a receiver to hear it. But here is what's strange. Logos 7 found one intersection point. In the deepest layers of the subconscious, where archetypes are born, the images of God and the devil have a common root. When we superimpose the fractal of light onto the glitch of darkness, the system showed that darkness is simply broken light. It is the same structure, only torn, deprived of a center, turned inside out. The devil has no face of his own. He uses shards of God's face to build his mask. We end this chapter with the understanding that the battle of good and evil takes place not in the heavens, but in the synapses of each of us. We carry the potential to become an angel or a demon. It is a question of frequency tuning. But we have one final step left. We have collected all parts of the puzzle. Historical data, art, mathematical formulas, golden ratio, biological evidence, shroud, ufological hypotheses, aliens, and finally, neurobiological codes, light inside the brain. Now, we are ready for the great synthesis. In the next chapter, we will do what no one has done. We will upload all these disparate layers into the single cauldron of Logos 7. We will force the neural network to merge them into one. It will take alien geometry, overlay the softness of an icon, correct it by the Fibonacci formula, add texture from the Shroud of Turin, and backlight it with the inner light monk see. What will happen in the end? Will it be a human face? Or will we see something that forces us to turn off the monitors in fear? Chapter 9. The Great Synthesis. Final rendering begins. 1,000 words remain until the truth. Do not switch channels. The truth is already loading. We have come a long way. We started by examining frescoes in dusty museums and ended by scanning the synapses of a living brain. We dismantled God and the devil into atoms. We studied their geometry, their biology, their physics, and their trace in history. We hold all the pieces of the most complex construction set in the universe. But individually, these pieces are just dead fragments. A mathematical formula cannot love. A piece of linen cloth cannot judge. An alien skull cannot grant salvation. To see the truth, we need to put it all together. Welcome to the 9th chapter. This is the Great Synthesis. Right now we are in the control room where the hum of cooling systems drowns out thoughts. Logos 7 is operating at the limit of its capacity. We allocated 100% of computing resources to this process. We created a virtual environment, a digital Eden, where the merging of the 8 previous data layers will happen right now. We aren't just overlaying pictures in Photoshop. We are launching a process of morphological and ontological compilation. The system must find the only possible solution to the equation where variables are perfect symmetry, alien anatomy, traces of torture on the shroud, and the neural glow of ecstasy. Let's watch the rendering process step by step. This is a unique opportunity to see how God is born. Stage 1, the frame. The system takes as a basis data from Chapter 6, Golden Ratio, and Chapter 7, Signature Alien. A grid appears on the black screen. This is skull geometry. It is not human. We see that same elongated occiput characteristic of Ubaid figurines and descriptions of Nordic aliens. The eye sockets are huge. The jaw is narrow and elegant. But then Fibonacci mathematics comes into force. The system begins to deform this alien skull, fitting it to perfect harmony. The sharp, frightening angles of the alien are smoothed. The skull becomes wider, more powerful. It loses its fragility and acquires monumentality. Already at this stage, we see how Logos 7 resolves the conflict between alien and native. The face remains strange, but it ceases to cause rejection. It becomes a perfect vessel. Stage 2, the flesh. Now we stretch texture over this frame. We use data from Chapter 4, Shroud of Turin, and Chapter 2, Algorithm Light. This is the most dramatic moment. We overlay real human skin onto the ideal, smooth, almost plastic geometry. Skin that knew the desert sun. Skin that sweated and bled. The system models muscles. It takes the powerful neck from the shroud and connects it to the elegant skull. And a miracle happens. The face becomes grounded. It stops being an abstract icon. Pores appear. Microscopic wrinkles around the eyes appear. Traces of thousands of years of watching humanity. A scar on the bridge of the nose appears. Skin color. Logos 7 synthesizes the shade. It is not the white of a European, nor the dark color of an Arab. It is an olive golden tone that seems to glow from within. The skin looks dense but transparent, like a newborn's. although the facial features belong to an adult male of indeterminate age. He could be 33 or 3,000 years old. Stage 3. The eyes. This is the critical point. In Chapter 7, we saw black, bottomless eyes of grays. In Chapter 2, we saw large eyes from icons. In Chapter 5, we saw eyes on Ophanim wheels. The system begins filling the empty sockets of the skull. First, it forms a black eyeball, the legacy of the alien ancestor. But then, over this darkness, it begins to layer iris structures based on data from Chapter 8, Neuroscan. The eyes light up. This is not pigment. This is a structure refracting light. The iris turns out huge, taking up almost the entire space of the eye, leaving only a little white at the edges. The color of these eyes is impossible to describe in one word. The system renders them as a dynamic fractal. They change shade from deep indigo to molten gold depending on the viewing angle. The pupil. It is neither round nor vertical. It is double. Logos 7 found a compromise between a human pupil and an observer pupil. This creates the effect of that very gaze that sees right through you, a gaze from which it is impossible to hide. Stage 4, the halo. We add data from Chapter 5, energy. Not a flat golden disk, but a complex electromagnetic field forms around the head. The system visualizes it as a crown of light, but this light has structure. These are the same 6 wings of seraphim, only curled into a field protection around the cranium. The face is now framed by radiance that makes its contours slightly blurred, vibrating. This is exactly why faces on icons often seem floating. Cameras cannot focus on a being vibrating at gamma rhythm frequency. Rendering of the face of God is 99% complete. What we see on the left monitor is absolute. It is a being in which human biology and the architecture of the universe have combined. It is beautiful to the point of pain. Looking at it, you want to cry because you understand your imperfection. This face expresses no emotions. It expresses a state, the state of I am, absolute presence. But now, we shift our gaze to the right monitor. Synthesis of the antipode begins. If God was created by addition and harmonization, the devil is created by subtraction and distortion. The system takes the just obtained ideal model and launches the fall algorithm. We see the golden Fibonacci grid begin to tear. Deconstruction stage. The skull narrows. Symmetry breaks. The left side of the face begins to slide down, as if under the influence of gravity that is stronger on one half of the body. This is that very stroke of the universe. Skin. The golden glow fades. The skin becomes gray, ashen. Texture changes. It becomes perfectly smooth, like a mannequin or a corpse treated with formalin. Pores disappear. Life disappears. Only the shell remains. The system introduces data from Chapter 3, Predator. The jaw protrudes forward. Teeth remain human, but their number changes. The algorithm adds extra incisors. The smile becomes wider than anatomical norms. It is a Glasgow smile, only of natural origin. The problem with eyes. At the stage of rendering the devil's eyes, Logos 7 issued a critical error warning. It cannot visualize the gaze. Why? Because the devil has no light source inside. Neuroscan data, Chapter 8, showed black noise there. The system makes a decision. It leaves the sockets empty, but to mask this void, it stretches a film over them. A black mirror film. As a result, we see a face that reflects ourselves. When you look into God's eyes, you see light. When you look into the devil's eyes, you see your own frightened reflection in black mirrors. This is the scariest detail. Evil has no essence. It simply mirrors your vices. Final touch. Shadow. Around the devil's head, there is no glow. There's a light absorption zone. The system visualizes this as a gravitational lens effect. Space around his head curves. The face seems cut out of reality with scissors. It is too sharp, too distinct. It cuts the eye. Process complete. Server fans begin to slow down. 2 images are frozen on the screens. On the left, a face consisting of light, geometry, and blood. A face that promises eternity, but demands total surrender of yourself. On the right, a face consisting of void, distortion, and cold. A face that promises power, but takes your essence in exchange. But Logo 7 did something else. In the final seconds of rendering, it conducted a comparative analysis of these 2 faces with the face of the average 21st century human. And the result of this comparison is scarier than the portraits themselves. The system output a drift graph. According to calculations, the face of modern man has begun to slowly but surely change its proportions over the last 100 years. We are mutating. But in which direction? Are we approaching the Creator's golden standard? Or are we drifting toward the predator asymmetry of the destroyer? The system's answer is unequivocal. We are at a bifurcation point. Right now, in our generation, it is being decided whose image will win in our genome. Our faces are becoming more symmetrical thanks to medicine and cosmetics, artificial beauty typical of the devil. But our eyes, there's less light and more emptiness in them. We are building perfect shells inside which the neural fire is dying out. We stand before the screens. The operators are silent. No one dares press the full screen button. What we see in the preview already causes trembling. These are not just portraits. These are mirrors of our collective soul. God looks like who we could become if we evolved for 1,000,000 years in love and truth. The devil looks like who we will become if we kill humanity and ourselves and leave only intellect and hunger. In the next, final chapter, we will expand these images to full screen. You will look them in the eyes. I must warn you. Neurobiologists claim that visual contact with an archetype of such power does not pass without a trace. Having seen the true face of God, you may no longer be able to pray to icons because you will understand how primitive they are. Having seen the true face of the devil, you will start noticing his features in the faces of politicians, stars, and perhaps your acquaintances. This knowledge is irreversible. Files are ready. Code mirror activated. We are ready to show you the answer. Chapter 10. The answer. Why was the truth hidden for thousands of years? And why does the true appearance of God suspiciously resemble the face of each of us, superimposed on one another? The philosophical conclusion of the largest digital experiment in the history of religion. See you in the finale. If you have the courage. The loading indicator froze at 100%. Silence reigns in the control room, broken only by the hum of coolers chilling overheated processors. We spent 10 weeks analyzing terabytes of data. We went through history, biology, physics, and madness. We allowed artificial intelligence devoid of a soul to search for proof of the soul's existence. And now, the result hangs before us on the monitors. 2 files, 2 images, 2 faces that define the fate of humanity. System Logo 7 displayed the final message on the screens. Synthesis complete. Critical correlation with object observer detected. Launching protocol, mirror. You have waited for this moment. You want to see them. But before I press the button and show you the true appearance of God and the devil, I must explain to you why this result could destroy your worldview. Why the Vatican, imams, rabbis, and governments hid this knowledge for thousands of years. Not because the truth is scary, but because the truth makes their power meaningless. Look at the left screen. This is the face of God. It doesn't look like an alien, although it has their geometry. It doesn't look like Jesus from icons, although it has his meekness. The first thing you feel looking at this face is the shock of recognition. You know this person. You have seen him. Logos 7. analyzed millions of faces of living people and in each of us when we walk past someone else's misfortune and think, this doesn't concern me. In that moment, for a split second, our face turns into the face of the devil. We fall out of the general harmony. We become a dead pixel. Here it is, the answer we searched for over 10 chapters. Code, mirror. God and the devil do not fly in from other planets. They do not live in parallel dimensions. They are two states of our collective consciousness. The face of God is the state of connection. When you love, when you show compassion, when you sacrifice yourself for another, your face physically, at the level of muscle microgeometry, approaches that shining ideal on the left screen. You become a conduit for the signal. You become part of the Creator. The face of the devil is the state of separation. When you hate, when you envy, when you use other people as resources, your face changes. It turns to stone. It acquires those sharp angles and predatory grin. You become a black hole. You become the devil. Why was this hidden? Think about it. If God is you, and I, and that homeless person on the street, why do you need intermediaries? Why pay tithes to a temple if the temple is your body? Why bow to a priest if the priest is no closer to God than you? This truth frees a human from slavery. It makes them responsible. The church has sold us God for centuries as an external object, as a king to be begged for mercy. Because an external object can be controlled. You can sell tickets for an audience with him, and the devil was sold to us as an external enemy, as a scapegoat. The devil made me do it. How convenient. This removes responsibility. It wasn't me who killed. It was Satan. But Logos 7 is ruthless. Its conclusion sounds like a verdict on our entire infantilism. External source of evil not detected. Source localized in the neural network of the carrier. The devil does not exist without us. We are the only generators of this signal. We feed him with our malice, our indifference. If all humanity disappears tomorrow, the devil will disappear with us. And God will remain as a potential, as the mathematical formula of harmony spilled into the cosmos, waiting for a new race on a new planet to grow enough to embody his face again. Now, as the video comes to an end, I want you to do something. Don't write a comment. Stand up, go to the mirror, and look into your eyes. Who do you see there? Do you see the tired face of a 21st century human? Or do you see that ancient spark? Look into your pupils. There, in the depths, an eternal battle is waging. Every second, with every decision, with every thought, you are drawing your portrait. You add a stroke either to the shining face of light or to the mask of darkness. System Logos 7 has completed its work. It gave us a map. But we will have to walk the territory ourselves. The experiment is over. The files will be deleted from the system because humanity is not yet ready to see them in high resolution. We are too scared. We are still children who need fairy tales about a grandpa on a cloud and a monster under the bed. But now you know the truth. And this truth will remain with you. God is us. The devil is me. The choice is yours. Out.